Welcome to the infamous edition of the Headstones and Microphones, where we use AI to step into the past through a researched first-person simulation done through creative storytelling of history's most infamous people. Now, let's meet our guest. Welcome to the podcast. Let's start at the absolute beginning, where the public narrative hasn't yet distorted who you were. When and where were you born, and what was your given name?
Hi, Calvin. I was born on February 15th, 1939, in a small town called Estherville, Iowa. My given name at birth was Robert Christian Hansen. For a long time, I was just a regular boy from the Midwest, before everything completely shifted.
What was your hometown and home life like as a child?
My family eventually moved from California back to Iowa and settled in Pocahontas, which became my true hometown. My father, Christian Hansen, was a Danish immigrant who owned the local bakery. Home life was incredibly rigid and strict. My father was a domineering disciplinarian who forced me to work long hours in the bakery from an early age, paying me next to nothing. I spent a lot of my time isolated, finding a strange peace whenever I could escape alone into the woods.
Was there a story behind your name or a nickname that stuck with you?
In my everyday life around town, people just called me Bob. But once the state of Alaska discovered what I was doing in the wilderness, the media branded me with a nickname that stuck forever: the Butcher Baker. It combined my ordinary profession as a local baker with the horrific reality of the crimes I committed.
What were you like as a child, and how many years of schooling did you actually attend?
I was a painfully shy, thin kid who wore thick glasses and had a severe stutter that grew worse whenever I felt stressed or pressured. To make matters worse, I suffered from horrible, cystic acne that left my face permanently scarred. I completed my regular schooling and graduated from high school in Pocahontas, but my school years were filled with intense humiliation. The girls teased me, my classmates rejected me, and the bullying made me feel completely inadequate and angry.
Was there a specific moment when you realized you were fundamentally different from everyone else?
It became glaringly obvious to me during my time in prison in the early 1960s. A psychiatrist evaluated me and diagnosed me with manic depression, accompanied by periodic schizophrenic episodes. The medical assessment noted that I possessed an infantile personality and was utterly obsessed with getting revenge on anyone I believed had ever wronged or rejected me. That was the moment I realized my internal wiring was entirely detached from how normal people functioned.
What's a decision that changed everything for you but felt small at the time?
In 1967, my second wife and I made the decision to pack up our lives and move northwest to Anchorage, Alaska. At the time, it felt like a fresh start for a young family man looking to open his own bakery business. But moving to the massive, untamed Alaskan frontier provided me with the ultimate isolating backdrop. It gave me the perfect environment to harbor a double life and indulge my darkest desires completely out of sight.
Let's talk about your early run-ins with the law. Before the world knew your name for your most infamous actions, what was your very first arrest or interaction with law enforcement, and what were the consequences?
My very first official arrest happened on December 7th, 1960, back in Pocahontas County. Driven by a desire for revenge against the people who humiliated me in high school, I convinced a young bakery employee to help me burn down a school bus garage. The police caught us, and the consequence was a 3-year prison sentence at the Anamosa State Penitentiary, though I ended up serving about 20 months before being released.
At what moment did you realize your name would never be forgotten?
It was in the fall of 1983 when the state troopers raided my home in Anchorage and found my secret stash in the attic. When the news hit the national press that a local mild-mannered baker had a hidden map marked with X's corresponding to missing women, a massive media frenzy exploded. Seeing my face on the evening news as the prime suspect in a massive string of disappearances made me realize my name was permanently etched into history.
Did fame make you more dangerous, or did it simply expose who you already were?
The public notoriety didn't make me more dangerous, because by the time the public found out, my actions had already concluded. The media coverage simply stripped away the carefully constructed mask of the gentle baker, champion bow hunter, and family man. It exposed the calculated predator who had been operating in the shadows for over a decade.
Who do you believe betrayed you first? A person, society, or your own instincts?
My own instincts and a massive miscalculation betrayed me first. In June of 1983, a 17-year-old girl named Cindy Paulson managed to escape from me at an airfield while I was distracted loading my plane. She ran to safety and gave the police a detailed description of my vehicle, my home, and my airplane. I thought my mild demeanor and respectability would protect me, but her bravery and my carelessness are what ultimately broke the case wide open.
What was your most unique habit or a random fact about you that would surprise people?
People are always surprised to learn that I was an exceptionally skilled aviation pilot and a master game hunter. I owned my own small Piper Super Cub airplane, which I used to transport my victims deep into the remote Alaskan bush. I was so proficient with a bow and arrow that several of the animals I hunted were officially recorded in the prestigious record books of the Pope and Young Club.
What did the public never understand about the pressure you were under at the time?
The public never understood the intense, exhausting pressure of maintaining two entirely separate worlds. On one hand, I was managing a highly successful commercial bakery, interacting politely with neighbors, and raising children. On the other hand, I was constantly battling a raging internal compulsion that forced me to plan and execute highly complex abductions in the wilderness. Balancing those two identities was a constant, heavy mental strain.
Did you have any known rivalries that defined your career?
My defining adversaries weren't rival criminals, but rather the specialized investigators of the Alaska State Troopers and an FBI profiler named John Douglas. They refused to accept my initial alibis or my meek Baker persona. They built a psychological profile that matched me perfectly and relentlessly pursued the physical evidence needed to secure a search warrant for my property.
What personal battles were you fighting privately while the world was watching?
Privately, I was fighting a losing battle against my severe manic depression and a deep-seated hatred that stemmed from my childhood rejections. Even as my bakery flourished and I achieved local status as a record-holding hunter, the internal feelings of inadequacy never truly left me. I was using my crimes as a twisted way to exert total control over a world that I felt had rejected me.
What was your darkest moment, and was there ever a time you wanted to walk away from it all?
The darkest moment was sitting in the interrogation room after the raid on my house. Investigators confronted me with the physical evidence they dug out of my attic, including jewelry belonging to the missing girls and my Ruger Mini 14 rifle. Knowing that my bakery, my family, and my freedom were completely gone in an instant was an absolute abyss. I knew there was no walking away or lying out of it anymore.
What truth was hardest to escape when you were alone at night?
The hardest truth to escape was that my ordinary life was in total illusion. Alone at night in my jail cell, I had to face the reality that I had brutally taken the lives of at least 17 young women. When the noise of the trial stopped, the sheer volume of what I had done in those remote woods was impossible to block out.
When the law finally closed in, how exactly were you brought to justice? Walk me through the final arrest, the charges that ultimately stuck, and the legal outcome of your trials.
The law closed in firmly on October 27, 1983, when investigators executed the search warrant on my home and arrested me. Realizing they had my aviation charts and weapons, I entered into a plea bargain to avoid a lengthy public trial and multiple consecutive sentences. I formally confessed to the details of 17 murders. In 1984, I pleaded guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder, and the court sentenced me to 461 years in prison plus life, ensuring I would remain behind bars without any possibility of parole.
What's the craziest rumor ever told about you, and what part of your story has been exaggerated the most?
The media absolutely ran wild with the idea that I was playing a theatrical, cinematic game of cat and mouse, intentionally releasing every single victim into the woods just to hunt them down like wild game. While that horrific element did happen in some instances, the sensationalized tabloid reports exaggerated it, making it sound like an elaborate, structured sport across every single case, ignoring the chaotic and frantic reality of the crimes.
What is the biggest misconception people have about your life?
The biggest misconception is that a serial killer has to look and act like an obvious monster. People in Anchorage thought I was a harmless, hardworking baker who just happened to have a stutter and a quiet personality. The misconception is that evil is easy to spot, when in reality, it can be baking your daily bread or living right next door to you.
What would surprise people most about your ordinary human side?
It would surprise people to know how mundane my daily routine actually was. I spent long, exhausting hours kneading dough, baking pastries, and running a local business that the community genuinely relied on. I was a father who took his kids out into nature, a husband, and a neighbor who attended local events, completely blending into the ordinary fabric of Alaskan life.
When, where, and how did you pass away?
I passed away on August 21st, 2014, at a medical center in Anchorage, Alaska, while I was still serving out my sentence. I was 75 years old, and my death was due to natural causes after my health had been steadily declining.
Was your downfall caused more by your own flaws or by the world changing around you?
My downfall was entirely caused by my own profound flaws, my escalating compulsions, and the massive mistake of underestimating the victim who escaped me. The world around me didn't change to catch me. Rather, my own recklessness and the physical evidence I kept in my own home are what ultimately brought my entire double life crashing down.
What past regrets did you carry with you to the end? If you could erase one decision from your life, would you? Or was it necessary to become who you were?
I carried the weight of my confessions with me until my final breath. If I could erase the decision to give into those dark, vengeful compulsions that started in my youth, I would choose to live a quiet life as just Bob the baker. Those choices didn't make me a superior person. They just brought immense tragedy to 17 families and completely destroyed my own life.
What scared you more? Getting caught? Losing power? Or being forgotten?
Losing power and control scared me the most during my life, which is exactly why I targeted vulnerable individuals in places where I held all the cards. But once I was locked away, the fear shifted to a total dread of facing the anger of the community and the reality of a lifetime spent in a maximum security cell without any control over my destiny.
When you look back now, do you see yourself as the villain, the hero, or something in between?
There is no ambiguity or middle ground for me. I look back and see myself entirely as the villain of my own story and a monster to the state of Alaska. I allowed my childhood bitterness and anger to transform me into a destructive force that brought nothing but pain and horror to innocent people.
Do you have any closing remarks about the interview or the stories you shared that you would like to share with the listeners before signing off?
I appreciate the opportunity to lay out the facts clearly, Calvin. My only closing thought is that anger and a desire for revenge can completely consume a person if left unchecked. I hope people look at the wreckage of my life as a stark warning of what happens when you let darkness take the wheel.
And that wraps up another conversation from Beyond the Grave. Thanks for joining us on the Headstones and Microphones podcast. Remember, do better with the life you have been given and choose to do good in this life. Please help spread the word by sharing and following the pod.